Enjoy early access to ad-free episodes each week when you subscribe to Wedding Planning Podcast Premium in Apple Podcasts. Enjoy the show. Hey there, and welcome to this week's brand new episode of the Wedding Planning Podcast. Thank you, as always, very, very much for joining me here today. And an extra special thank you for inviting me into your engagement season. I know what a special time this is, and it's a huge honor to be included. So thank you for putting that trust and confidence into me. Today, I have a priceless show to share with you. We're going to talk about 15 unexpected wedding expenses that could blow your budget. Wedding planning can be summed up as the little dollar bill emoji with flapping wings. Yep, that's the one I text to my best friends when we've had a pricey week around here in my household. And I always think of that emoji when I think of wedding planning and how much everything costs and how there's always a bill due and just money flying around everywhere. So today in our conversation, we're going to shine a light on 15 of those sneaky, unexpected expenses that a lot of couples never plan for, so that you can adjust your budget early on and not be taken by surprise in the coming months. And let's get our conversation started with service fees and gratuities, otherwise known as tips. Many venues and vendors charge service fees. These are often in the range of 15 to 25% on top of their quoted prices. This means that when you get a quote for $200 per person at an all-inclusive wedding venue, that number at the end of the day may actually be closer to $250 per person. That's a big difference, to say the least. Tips for caterers, bartenders, DJs, hair and makeup artists, and other service providers add up quickly. We could have an entirely separate and detailed conversation just about tipping vendors on a future show. That's a huge topic in and of itself. We're not going to get deep into it today. I do want to talk here quickly about another point, though, that has come up a few times in our past conversations about budgeting and venue shopping as it relates to service fees and gratuities. I mentioned briefly a minute ago, when an all-inclusive venue quotes you a flat rental fee of $2,000, in addition to $150 per person, and you have 100 wedding guests, that does not mean that your total line item expense is going to be $15,000. That's 150 times 100 people, plus the $2,000 flat rental fee. It's really, really important that you be eyes open about this in the venue shopping process. If your total budget is $15,000 and you hear $150 per person and you're inviting 100 people, but you say to yourself, 100 people, not everyone is going to come. So that is going to cushion the $2,000 rental fee. It sounds like we're good. Not so fast. If 80 people out of your 100 come, then that's $12,000 plus the $2,000 flat rental fee. Okay, so we're at $14,000. But then you have a 25% gratuity service fee, and that's going to bump you up to $17,500. That's nearly 20% over your budget of $15,000. Depending on your wedding budget, maybe this is not a huge deal if you can cut back and save in other categories to kind of compensate for that overage. But a series of miscalculations like this over months and months of planning can all add up to a major and meaningful financial hit at the end. All right. I know talking about math on a podcast is not the most engaging thing, so I'll leave it at that. But in summary, please be aware of finding out your actual bottom line price tag as you're shopping for not only your venue and your catering, but also for other vendors as well. Okay, next up, let's talk about your marriage license and any officiant fees. Now, a marriage license is probably not going to set you back more than $100 at the very most. Depends on your location. Do some research and check that out, but it shouldn't be a huge expense for the actual license itself. Where we get into expensive territory is if we're thinking of hiring a professional officiant. You might also be unpleasantly surprised by a separate ceremony venue expense. So that's something to be aware of as well. I'm going to touch on this point a couple times throughout today, but if you can find a venue where you can do your ceremony and your reception in the same rental space, that's a huge win. I know that doesn't work out for everyone if you're getting married in a religious building, or if your heart is set on having your ceremony in a different specific place, then that's not going to work. But if you're flexible and that does work for you, that is a huge win. And then last thing here, a popular way to kind of circumvent having to hire an officiant would be to have someone close to you ordained to perform the marriage ceremony itself. That is a very, very meaningful way to celebrate your marriage. And I love that. But there are also filing fees for getting that special person in your life ordained and licensed. So go ahead and factor that in early. Next on our list, a pretty common annoying expense that you'll hear about is postage. Formal invitations with inserts are 99.9% probably going to require extra postage, especially if they're heavy or oddly shaped. And then also to factor in here, you need postage on your save the date cards, your RSVP cards, and your thank you cards. This could be $100 for you. It could be $500 for you. Kind of depends on the route you go, but we can all agree that buying $500 worth of stamps in the final months of your wedding planning might be the thing that just sets you over the edge and makes you crazy. Going electronic, even for some of the components, might be a good option for you. This doesn't need to be an all or nothing. You could always send traditional paper invitations and then ask guests to submit RSVPs digitally on your wedding website, for example. That would cut the postage in half. In my humble opinion, thank you notes are the exception here. I'm just one of those people who thinks that you should always have a physically handwritten thank you card mailed. That's just my opinion. And those thank you cards shouldn't cost more than one forever stamp to send. Next on our list of unexpected expenses, we have alterations and undergarments. No huge surprise here. Your wedding dress and or suit will likely need some alterations, which can cost an annoying surprise hundreds of dollars. And yet this is an item that's always sneaking up on people and not factored into the original wedding dress and suit or tuxedo budget. So add it in there. It's probably going to come up. And if it doesn't, then that's awesome. You have an extra few $100s that you can kind of allocate somewhere else. Also to note here, special lingerie, shapewear, shoes, and accessories are often forgotten or underestimated in your budget. I personally would not recommend purchasing any of this stuff from your dress salon. I would rather shop for them at a department store, a discount store, or our good old favorite, Amazon. The markups at a dress boutique are insane, and we have so many options today. I have no idea what we did without Amazon. Maybe you could choose a few different options for shapewear that offer free returns. Try everything out with your dress and then return what doesn't work. I literally just looked, and a pair of $20 shapewear shorts on Amazon is $50 at David's Bridal. So take it or leave it. Just my personal tip there, because as we can all relate to, all of this random little stuff adds up. Next on our list, trials, pre-wedding grooming, health, fitness, beauty. I know this is a big category, so guess what? There's a lot of opportunity for sneaky expenses to add up here. Hair and makeup trials. before your wedding day are not always included in the bridal package price. I would expect to pay separately for each trial you do unless it's specifically outlined otherwise in your package or your contract. You also might want to do multiple trials with different artists before making a commitment. So that's another expense that adds up there too as well. If you can do double duty with a hair trial and then have your engagement photo shoot scheduled that same day, that's a great way to kind of maximize your investment in a trial. And you could do the same with makeup, although in my experience, wedding day makeup can be pretty intense or more intense than we would usually wear on a daily basis. So that may or may not be the look that you're going for with your engagement photos, but just an idea there. And then all of these beauty prep extras, manicures, pedicures, facial, teeth whitening, spray tans, this all adds up so fast. If you're planning on joining a new fitness studio or starting a new vitamin regimen, using new facial care products, this stuff is all just adding up quickly in the background. I am someone who's always really excited to try new facial stuff, new vitamin supplements. I love online classes like Pilates, bar, yoga. So every few months, I look at how much all of these subscriptions and such add up to. And trust me, I can relate to this budget category, even in post-wedding life. Next category for today, all of these little extra things that make our guests comfortable. Heaters, fans, tents for outdoor weddings. This stuff is all expensive. We talked about tent rental in our venue show from a couple of weeks ago. Rental and assembly on a large outdoor event tent can run in the thousands of dollars. If you're in an area that's prone to rain and you are 100% all in no matter what on having an outdoor celebration, then this is a necessary contingency item for you if that's the type of climate you live in. And then smaller things, umbrellas, fans, blankets, all of this stuff in case of weather changes, to have them available for your guests is obviously totally optional, but it is another expense to keep in mind. Next up, transportation. Shuttle buses, limos, Ubers, not cheap. You should already be thinking about transportation considerations early on in your venue shopping process. The less people moving you need to coordinate, the better. So if you can find a great venue that offers both ceremony and reception to be held on the same location, that's a huge bonus. And jumping back to catering, we have corkage and cake cutting fees. Some venues do charge extra if you bring your own alcohol and or cake. So be sure to ask about this during your venue shopping process. Being able to supply your own alcohol is a huge bonus. That's a huge win if your venue allows you to do that. However, if they charge a $20 corkage fee per bottle, then that's going to majorly dip into those savings. And honestly, it might even wipe them out entirely. So that's an important expense to really make sure you understand on your catering and or venue bill. And we can't forget about overtime fees, overtime charges. Your vendors, photographer, DJ, your wedding planner, venue staff, they may charge you if the event runs longer than planned. Not even they may, they probably will. If you're on the fence about adding on an additional 1 to 2 hours of time at your contract signing phase, go ahead and compare the price difference between taking the extra time at the beginning and paying an overtime fee and or penalty at the end. It may be advantageous to you to just go ahead and extend it 2 hours just to be safe, because that might be a lot more cost effective than waiting until the end and having a penalty and an overtime fee kick in. The next unexpected expense category is a big one. This is our day of coordinator and or setup and cleanup crew. Now, even if you don't hire a full service planner or coordinator, a day of coordinator is critical to a smooth wedding day. I know I say this over and over again. It's for a reason. For an extremely broad price range, a professional day of coordinator will run anywhere between $1,500 to $3,000 and up. And that's very dependent on your marketplace. I'm sorry, I can't give you a more specific number there. This is such a common last minute expense, though. If you have the space in your budget to address this early on and hire someone, please do yourselves a favor and do it. It will save you so much time and so much effort and stress down the road, especially in that critical month and weeks right before your wedding day. And I think so many couples feel in the beginning like it's not that complicated. We're doing things pretty straightforward. We're keeping it small and simple. This isn't something we need. And I see time and time again that as you creep closer into that last 2 months, 1 month, and weeks, you're then scrambling to find someone to help because it all can kind of snowball really, really quickly. Do you have to hire a professional for this? Absolutely not. But you do have to have a plan in place to have a designated point person who is not you, and ideally not someone who's a VIP guest at your wedding. We have talked about this again over and over, and we'll actually talk about it again next week. It's just such an important topic, and it keeps coming up. If you're just a couple of months away from your wedding day and you don't have a day of coordinator or a point person lined up, please do that now. And then last note here before we change topics, some venues require couples to handle the setup, the cleanup, and the teardown. And that might mean hiring extra help or paying your existing vendors overtime to help facilitate that process. I don't want you and your brand new husband or wife being the ones who have to stay until 2 o'clock in the morning picking up rental items and cleaning trash. That's not what you should be doing on your wedding day. So make sure you have that covered and factored into your budget early on. Moving on to vendor meals and food. Lots of vendors, your photographer, your DJ, your coordinator, your officiant, they will need to be counted in your final head count in terms of serving a meal at your reception. Look at your individual contracts and budget appropriately. This isn't always the case, but oftentimes it is. And if you're looking at a $60 plate of food times 10 vendors, that's $600, not including gratuity. And that's not a fun surprise if you didn't plan for it in your original guest count and your venue and or catering calculations. We're on number 12, believe it or not, and we're going to talk quickly about honeymoon and travel cost, passport renewals, travel insurance, airport transfers, baggage fees. Wow, traveling is not cheap these days, and that's not even to mention airfare, hotel, meals, activities. Some couples keep their honeymoon budget completely separate from their wedding budget, and that's totally fine. This is an expense that can always be delayed if you need to. You can push it out to a 1-year anniversary trip, for example. But on the other hand, if you are adamant about taking a honeymoon right after your wedding, then this is a pretty big, major additional expense to consider. Next on our list of unexpected expenses, decoration costs, extra floral arrangements on side tables, candles, lighting, additional signage, additional furniture rentals. I could go on and on. Check the fees within your contracts, especially your floral contracts. Here's a big one. Make sure you have a bottom line amount that's figured into your overall budget. And that bottom line, it has to include additional gratuities and fees. A really common fee in terms of florals. Lots of couples will repurpose flower arrangements from their ceremony and then carry those over to the reception to make them work twice. And that's a great idea, but it comes with a fee. Most, if not all, florists are going to charge you to move those flowers from ceremony site to reception site. So just be aware of all these things. And then also keep an eye out for fuel surcharges, service fees, gratuities, for your rental setup and your cleanup crew. Next, unexpected expense, favors, and welcome gifts. Small gifts for our guests or welcome bags for out-of-town people can add up in the end. This is another totally optional expense, but it's something to consider early on. If you want to steer clear of this coming up at the very last minute and being a surprise, then go ahead and put a couple $100 away in this category at the beginning of your budgeting. And if you've been counting, we are at number 15, and surprise, this is actually going to be second to last. I have one more after this, which is going to be just kind of a catch-all bonus. But for number 15, not the most fun topic, okay? Not the most fun expense to talk about, a prenuptial agreement. Lots of us think this doesn't apply to us for a million different reasons. I can tell you from a nightmare experience that one of my closest friends from childhood has just gone through, that she would turn back the clock and have a prenup done in a heartbeat if that was an option. She is recently divorced. She's on the hook for a gross amount of money every month until her very young children are 18 years old. And a $1,000 online prenup could have protected her against all of this. And no, she did not make a ton of money at all. The two of them, while married, had zero assets. So all of this scary story to illustrate, prenups are not just for wealthy people. They can protect average middle-class working people against really lopsided, unfair court judgments and legal loopholes, and it's something to seriously consider. I am not an attorney. This is not legal advice. This is a huge topic that we could explore much deeper. There are online options to have this done, and of course, using a traditional attorney is an option as well. A prenuptial agreement could cost anywhere between $1,000 on the cheap end to thousands of dollars, depending on the complexity of your situation. I'll sum it up. We all ideally, in a perfect world, would get married once. That's not how the world operates, and this is a really smart way to protect yourself. And now we are at the final unexpected expense category, which is post-wedding costs. And I have a long list here. So first off, cleaning fees for your venue. Hopefully that's added into your venue contract. Take a look. It might not be. For example, if you're renting an Airbnb, if you're renting a clubhouse, someone's private property, you may have a separate cleaning fee. Be aware of that. Fees for lost or damaged rental items. This could be chairs, floral containers, suits or tuxedos. Personal story, we were missing 2 sets of shoes when we returned everyone's tuxedos. I have no idea how that happened. No clue, but we were on the hook for them. Next, wedding dress preservation. You can expect to spend anywhere between about $250 to $1,000 and up if you want to preserve and save your wedding dress. And then similar to that, bouquet preservation. I did a really quick search on this and found options ranging between $150 to $600 and up. The photography category. So ordering photos, canvas prints, frames, albums, additional video or photo footage from your photographer or your videographer. That can be a significant post-wedding expense. Next one, name change fees. Specifically on your passport, which is currently $130 to renew in the US, changing your name on your bank statements, your credit card, your driver's license, that should not cost you extra fees, but that passport is the big one. And then next here, estate planning documents with your new spouse. Whether you're just getting started or you're updating an existing estate plan in attorney fees to be in the ballpark of $1,000 on the low end, multiple thousands of dollars on the high end. Really just depends on where you are in that process. And next, the dreaded post-wedding credit card debt. It happens. It's not ideal, but it happens. If it happens to you, no biggie. It's not the end of the world. Make a plan to get it paid off ASAP, maybe a lump sum using some of your wedding gifts, or maybe it's a monthly payment. Go ahead and figure out what you can afford each month to get that taken care of. And then last year, we have moving expenses. Whether you're moving into a brand new house or apartment together, or you're just combining two households into one, you may have to consider new furniture. You might want to purchase items not received from your registry to get your house all set up for a beautiful and bright future together. Okay, this was a long one. It was full to the brim of priceless stuff. So I hope you found it helpful. I will, of course, put up a blog post with a written recap of everything we talked about today. You can check the show notes when you have a hands-free moment for that link. I hope you loved today's show. I hope you'll share it with someone close to you who's helping you plan. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. We will talk again next week, same time, same place.